Ladies and gentlemen, we've all heard the phrase, knowledge is power. It's one of those statements that sounds profound, sounds smart, but it's a lie unless you act on it. Knowledge by itself is nothing but untapped potential. It sits in books. It floats in conversations. It lives in the minds of people who do nothing with it. And that's not power. That's just storage. You can read every book on success. You can memorize every strategy. You can take every online course. But until you execute, until you move, until you do something, you are no closer to your goals than someone who's never learned a thing. Let me tell you something that matters. Power comes from application, not just acquisition. If knowledge was power, then libraries would run the world. Professors would be billionaires and students would be CEOs. But that's not how it works. The real winners in life, they're the ones who take what they know and apply it with intensity. They're not the smartest. They're not the most educated. They're the ones who act when others hesitate. They build momentum while others are still thinking. And that's where the difference is made, because knowledge isn't power. Knowledge plus action, that is power. Knowledge plus execution, that is progress. Knowledge plus hunger, that is transformation. And let me tell you this, you don't need to know everything. You just need to act on what you already know. Success doesn't come from learning more. It comes from doing more with what you've learned. So stop waiting to be ready. Stop thinking you need one more course, one more book, one more tutorial. What you need is the courage to apply what you already have, because the truth is most people don't have a knowledge problem. They have an execution problem. Ladies and gentlemen, you were not put here to collect information. You were not born to just understand life. You were born to shape it, to move it, to lead it. So don't just learn, apply. Don't just understand, execute. Don't just dream, do. Because at the end of the day, knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is, we live in a world overflowing with information. At our fingertips, we have access to more knowledge than ever in human history. Yet, the majority of people still feel stuck, still feel powerless, still feel like nothing is changing. Why? Because knowledge alone is not enough. Learning something new doesn't mean your life will change. Change doesn't happen when you know. It happens when you do. You can study psychology, but still struggle with your emotions. You can read about fitness, but your body won't transform until you actually train. You can know all the business strategies, but unless you launch, you stay broke. This is the difference between intellectual growth and real world transformation. One fills your mind. The other reshapes your life. People confuse understanding with progress. They feel good watching videos, reading books, listening to experts, but they mistake that feeling for forward movement. There's a kind of illusion in acquiring knowledge. It tricks the brain into thinking it's doing something meaningful. But in reality, nothing changes until you act. Knowing how to build a fire doesn't make you warm. Knowing how to swim won't save you from drowning. Knowledge is potential. It's not power until it's used. You see, most people are not information poor. They're overloaded. They already know what they need to do. They're just not doing it. They don't have a lack of answers. They have a lack of implementation. And that's where everything breaks down. It's not how much you know that determines your success. It's how much you apply. It's how much you live out, practice, and commit to what you've learned. And here's the hard truth. People often hide behind knowledge. They use learning as an excuse to delay action. They'll say, I just need to read one more thing. I need to finish that course first. I'm not ready yet. I need to prepare more. No, you don't. You need to take that first step. You need to move forward imperfectly. You need to stop consuming and start executing. Think about it. Every transformation begins not with understanding, but with action. Want to get in shape? You don't need to read 50 fitness books. You need to show up and move your body. Want to fix your finances? You don't need to memorize investment strategies. You need to create a budget, save consistently, and make that first move. Ooh, want to grow a business? You don't need another podcast. You need to start building, start testing, start failing forward. The point is, this knowledge is inert unless you bring it to life through behavior. It's like electricity, potential energy, stored power. It's what you do with that current that lights the room, that powers the machine, that drives the result. The person who takes action on 10% of what they know will always outperform the person who understands everything but applies nothing, because results don't come from knowing, they come from doing, and doing requires courage, commitment, and energy. That's why some of the most successful people on the planet are not necessarily the most educated. They're the most decisive, the most consistent, the most action-driven. They didn't wait until they knew it all. They got started with what they had. They figured it out as they moved forward. So if you're serious about change, don't just collect more knowledge. Convert it into action. Don't just study success. Start building it. Start living it. Start embodying it through decisions and discipline. Because until you do that, knowledge remains nothing but potential. And potential unused dies in silence. What creates change is not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. Ideas are cheap. Plans are easy. Execution is everything. You can have the most brilliant strategy in the world. You can map out your goals with precision, but none of that matters until you follow through. Execution is where the real game is played. It's where vision becomes reality. It's the bridge between the internal world of knowledge and the external world of results. There are people who know exactly what to do. They've studied the books, attended the seminars, watched the tutorials, but their life never changes because they never pull the trigger. Knowing how to grow isn't the same as growing. Knowing how to succeed isn't the same as succeeding. The difference is action and motion. That's execution. You can talk about your goals all day. You can make vision boards and write intentions. But unless you execute, your life stays exactly the same. Real success doesn't come from having better ideas. It comes from doing the simple things that others refuse to do consistently and without making excuses. Because the world doesn't reward what you intend to do. It rewards what you actually do. You've probably seen it. Someone with less talent, less experience, less knowledge, yet they win. They rise, they lead. Why? Because they move. They take action. They execute relentlessly. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't overthink every step. They make the call. They send the email. They launch the project. While others are still getting ready, they're already making progress. And progress, tiny or massive, is what builds momentum. Execution is not about being perfect. It's about being effective. It's about getting things done, even if it's messy or uncomfortable. And here's what's powerful: execution builds confidence. Each time you follow through, You train your brain to trust yourself. That trust compounds. It fuels your self-belief. And eventually, belief becomes identity. You become the kind of person who follows through. You become the kind of person who gets results. You become the kind of person who finishes what you start. That shift changes everything. Not because you suddenly know more, but because you do more with what you already know. Information by itself is static. It sits there. It waits. But when you apply it, when you bring it into your actions, you turn that information into transformation. That's when you create impact. Impact in your business, impact in your health, impact in your relationships. Because impact is not a concept, it's a consequence, a direct outcome of consistent execution over time. Think about any great achievement. Behind it, you'll find a chain of actions, not just ideas, but relentless, disciplined, focused action. That's why execution is more powerful than strategy. It's why a simple plan, well executed, beats a brilliant plan that's never implemented. Some people keep waiting to feel motivated, but motivation comes from movement, from doing the work, not just thinking about it. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for certainty. Don't wait until you feel ready. Get into motion. Take the next step. Make progress, even if it's small, because every step you take builds momentum. And momentum is what separates dreamers from doers. It's what turns effort into impact. You don't need more knowledge. You need activation. You need movement. You need execution, because that's what transforms potential into results. That's what turns possibilities into realities. At the end of the day, the only thing that changes your life is the action you take, not the information you hold. So take what you know, no matter how little or how much, and put it into motion again and again and again, because that's where the power lies. Execution is what gives knowledge its force. It's what makes the invisible become real. We've been conditioned to believe that intelligence alone guarantees success, that if you're smart enough, if you know enough, results will follow. But reality proves otherwise. It's not the sharpest mind that always rises. It's the person who's most driven, most emotionally invested, and most relentless. Emotion is the engine. Knowledge is only the map. You can have the perfect strategy, a step-by-step blueprint, and all the data. But if you lack the emotional fire to move, to persist, to endure, you'll stay stuck. Because humans don't act on logic alone. We act on what we feel. Emotion drives motion. When you're emotionally hungry, you push through barriers. You go past excuses. You stop negotiating with yourself, and you execute with force. Knowledge gives you options. Emotion gives you urgency. That urgency is what causes breakthroughs. If success was just about knowing, then the most intelligent people on earth would be the happiest, healthiest, wealthiest. But they're not. Why? Because emotion creates commitment, and commitment sustains action through difficulty. Intellectual insight is passive. You can sit in a seminar, nod your head, take notes, feel clever, but none of that moves the needle until you feel it in your gut. Emotion anchors decisions. You make a real decision. Not when you think about something, but when you feel so strongly that you commit to it without retreat. Think of any life-altering decision you've made. You didn't decide because the facts were perfect. You decided because something inside you said, this must change now. That internal shift is not about intellect. It's emotional leverage. It's when pain becomes too much or the vision becomes too powerful. That's the force that changes behavior permanently. Emotion pulls you forward when logic says, wait. Emotion says, I must, while knowledge says, I should. You don't go to the gym consistently because you understand health statistics. You go because you're emotionally connected to your future self, because you feel what's at stake. You don't build a business is because you memorize strategy. You build it because there's something deep inside. A mission, a hunger, a drive that won't let you sit still. And that's why emotional drive must lead intellectual insight. The best minds still procrastinate, but the most emotionally compelled people, they act. Emotion fuels consistency, and consistency outperforms brilliance every time. Anyone can act when they feel like it, but emotional mastery allows you to act whether you feel like it or not. It creates emotional discipline, which is the real separator, because your emotional state determines your behavior. You can know what to do, but if you're tired, fearful, discouraged, or overwhelmed, you won't do it. That's why mastering your state, your energy, focus, and emotional intensity is more powerful than just expanding your knowledge. Emotion is the amplifier of knowledge. It takes ideas and charges them with urgency. It converts someday into now. You've likely seen people with less education but unstoppable energy, people with limited resources but unlimited drive. They win not because they know more, but because they feel more deeply. They're fueled by something internal, a sense of purpose, a deep why that keeps them going long after most people quit. That's the secret most overlook. Emotion gives knowledge its power. Emotion is the multiplier. So if you want to shift anything in your life, don't just seek more information. Seek the emotional fuel that will make change non-negotiable. Link the result to something meaningful, personal, urgent. Don't chase discipline. Chase emotional connection. Because when you care deeply enough, discipline becomes automatic. That emotional intensity, it's not reserved for the few. It can be created through focus, visualization, purpose, and standards. When you attach emotion to your outcomes, you elevate your behavior, you raise your standards, you break patterns. So don't just ask, what do I need to know? Ask, what do I need to feel that will drive me to act? Because feeling is the gateway to change. In the end, intellect informs you, but it is emotion that transforms you. Then transformation, not information, is what leads to lasting success.